Brief bit of our story and then open it up for questions. This is my family, my wife Julie, sitting closest to me, my daughter Taylor, who turns 21 next month, and my son John and Michael. Taylor has epilepsy. She was born in May of 1992. And at the time she was born, we knew she had some neurological issues and some challenges that she'd be facing, but we didn't really understand much about epilepsy, and we certainly knew nothing about seizures. And when she was 17 months old, she had a seizure. It was her first seizure, and that's when we first met Dr. Kerrigan. We had the opportunity to visit Barrow and PCH and got some great advice. Albeit he looked a lot younger back then, but he was great, and we had the opportunity to see him again many years later. Taylor had her first seizure at 17 months and did not have another seizure until she was almost 16 years old. She had other challenges, many of which were discussed in the last presentation. Learning difficulties, gross motor skill delay, things of that nature. But she didn't have another seizure until she was almost 16 years old. And from that point, she had infrequent seizures every 8 to 10 weeks. It took us about 3 years to get them under control. But thankfully, she's 26 months seizure-free. She just got her learner's permit on Monday. And I think you would all be wise to ask us to lag behind so that you can leave the parking lot before we do. We've had a number of challenges, as I said, some with the school districts, and I certainly think that those are questions that are well placed, and certainly my wife can address those. We had issues with medicine and how to cope with the adverse impact of some of the medicines that you will be prescribed. And again, my wife can address those. In fact, you'd be probably well advised to ask your questions of either my wife or my daughter, because the three men in the family are going to give you the bad advice. And if you don't believe it, just ask them, because they'll tell you that that's not exactly the way it happened. So that's basically our story. Taylor has a lot to say, and I think we'll be very happy to address any of your questions. She is an inspiration to our family. She's overcome an awful lot of obstacles that I personally don't think I could overcome. She does it with grace and humility, and she's an inspiration to us. So I think maybe at this point we should just open up for questions and see where we take this.
What did you do then in the end to seizure-free for the 20 years?
We found a doctor by the name of Dr. Rhonda Gerard, who's here at PCH, and a fantastic doctor. I think, correct me, I know you will, 8, 9 different medicines Taylor tried before we found the medicine that actually worked.
I say 4 or 5.
So there you go.
Sure, 4 or 5.
It seemed like 8 or 9 different medicines that we tried, but we finally found a combination of 2 different medicines that worked. The initial medicine that Taylor was prescribed, again, she would have been 15 and a half in high school, was very difficult for her to sustain. It changed her personality. It made her very lethargic. She was tired. She had headaches. And then trying to cope with school at the same time, it was difficult. In fact, one of the earlier questions that may have come from the front row in the previous presentation about having received a letter from the school threatening expulsion, my wife reminded me, because I had forgotten, that yes, we had one of those letters as well. As it turns out, our school district was very pliable once we got to a point where we could sit down and talk about 504 plans and IEPs and accommodations. They were very good. But there was some education that had to come along with it, both from the school district standpoint and ours as well.
What was the circumstance of that seizure? She was 15 or whatever.
Well, she had stayed out with a friend of hers. They had gone bowling. She had gone out with the family to go bowling with a friend of hers, and they had gone to her friend's house to spend the night. Well, apparently they stayed up till like 2:30 in the morning, giggling and talking like girls do. And at 5:30 in the morning, her friend rolled over to what she thought was Taylor dreaming. And so she tried shoving Taylor and pushing her to say, hey, wake up, you're having a bad dream. And Taylor then, her eyes... I said I wasn't going to do this, and I did. Anyway, her eyes rolled back in her head, and she started convulsing. And it was, they said it lasted about 5 minutes. Her friend called me crying. She said, oh my God, she's having a seizure. I can't get her out of it. I heard the mother on the phone talking to the paramedics. Got there immediately. I mean, I think we lived like a mile away. Walked. I ran in. I was stopped by one of the paramedics, and he said, whoa, 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 what are you doing? I said, that's my daughter up there. He goes, you need to calm down. Well, I went upstairs. She was done seizing. She was starting to come to. She was in that postictal state. Anyway, we rushed her to the hospital. They monitored her. We thought, geez, maybe this is a fluke. She stayed up till 2:30 in the morning. They tested her for drugs. That's one of the things. And they said it's very standard because teenagers tend to have seizures, or anybody who takes drugs can have seizures. So anyway, we got through that. Everything was fine. And basically said, we're not going to treat her yet, despite the fact that she had one at 17, 18 months old, because it could just be a fluke. Well, 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, he was home.
Yeah, so we were kind of put on notice to watch out for anything. And it was one morning, I had a friend of mine had slept over, and we were going to drive him over back to his house. I think it was like 8 in the morning, something like that, 7:45. And I just heard this weird noise. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but I just immediately thought, I should check on my sister because our bedrooms are right adjacent to each other. And I walked in, and she was on her left side, I believe, and was convulsing. And I just yelled through the house, and just basically like round 2. And then we kind of realized that it was going to, possibly a persistent issue, and kind of just went from there.
Okay, at that point, she saw a doctor, was put on medication. And it so happens that the medication she was put on first is the medication she is on now that is working. For some reason, when she was put on this medication at first, she was unable to function. She had headaches. She was tired. She was complaining constantly of severe headaches, missing school. I'd say she missed 30% of her junior year. We got her off the medication after trying 2 or 3 more after that, so it took 2 years. I finally made the decision at one point to say, done with the medication. She never had a seizure while she was on medication, but she wasn't on them longer than maybe 2-3 months before the symptoms for her were so severe that I just decided, it was also her pediatrician, to get the medication out of her system, let her clear up, and then we could restart and see what would happen. Went through 2 different doctors. Both of them were great. Finally heard about Dr. Gerard. Went to Dr. Gerard, and she insisted that Taylor was going to continue to have seizures. Based on her MRI, she said she is going to have seizures. So you run the risk of something serious happening to her if you don't medicate her. However, it is your choice. And we presented this to Taylor. Of course, by now she's a senior. She's able to understand this more. And then at that point, I waited a month with the script in front of me going, I'm not sure I can do this, I'm not sure I can do this. And I kept talking to her, and she was like, I don't care, whatever you want, I don't care, whatever. Finally, we started treating her with a new medication, and unfortunately, that one also did not work. Symptoms, side effects, virtually none. It was great. But she started having seizures again. Most of the time she had seizures were in her sleep. Not always, but most of them. And they were starting to hit every 3 months. And we started to see a cycle of every time we went up on the medication, she'd have more seizures. So then she was having 3 seizures at a time. At that point, then Dr. Gerard said, all right, we're done with this. It's not working. Let's back her off of this. Let's try the medication we first tried when she was 16, and I was hesitant there. She said, we have great results from this medication. I had done some reading online about it, and I said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? If she starts with horrible headaches again, we'll quickly know she can't handle it. She tolerated it. She tolerated it. So we went up on the new one. We went down on the previous one that was causing the seizure. Well, not causing. It wasn't maintaining the seizures. She's on a very low dose of the old one and a normal size dose of the new one. And she's been seizure free. I mean, she's had 1 or 2 episodes where she says, I feel weird, but we've not seen any grand mal seizures. So, yes, medication has worked for us. It's great.
Hi, I'd like to ask Taylor a question.
Okay.
My daughter is very similar to what she has her seizures, a couple of them in her sleep and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But she has autism, so she can't talk. And so she's had some minor seizures that have maybe lasted a couple seconds since she's been stable on her medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not able to talk. So I guess I'm curious to know what it's like to have epilepsy from your point of view.
That was it's a good question. It's awesome. I've had many doctors say, well, what's it like? Well, what's it like? And for the longest time, I had no idea. I would just be like, it's a weird feeling, and I black out. But the seizures that I've been having awake, I remember, like, my friend who was with me when I had the first one took me to the movies, and she's taken me a couple places where I had seizures. And we were going to the movies, and she was asking me about 4th of July, which was the day before. And so she goes, well, what'd you do yesterday? How was it? And I looked at her, and I was like, what do you mean yesterday? And she goes, yesterday was 4th of July. And she looked at me, and she kind of, like, stared at me. And she was like, are you feeling okay? So she could kind of see that I wasn't right. And she was like, do you want me to call your mom? And I was like, and it took me a good minute to maybe say, yeah, call her. And as soon as she called her, I heard her, like, it's really, honestly, I'm probably everywhere right now, but having the seizure, you can hear and you can see what's going on, but you can't always say. And that's the hardest thing until after, because the ones that I've had asleep, I don't know what's going on. I just wake up to people in my face telling me to breathe through this and whatever. But when you're awake, you do remember as much as you can remember. And like with the going to the movies, as soon as she called my mom, she said, I think Taylor's going to have it. And then she goes, oh my God, there she goes. And I remember falling back, or not falling back, but I remember starting to seize. And I actually saw 2 of my family members who weren't even in the car at that time. And then when I got out of the seizure, I said, wait, where's Aunt Tina and Kylie?
Yeah.
And then my mom was like, what are you talking about? You're with Lindsay. And that friend was with me through a couple of them, so she kind of got the gist of what happened. But
Tell about the time you texted when she couldn't talk.
At school.
She was in school.
I was in class, and it was my senior year. And I texted my mom saying I didn't feel well. And she texted me back and she said, okay, do you think it's a seizure?
No.
Yes, you did.
Okay, go
See, it's not just me.
Okay, so she said, do you think it's a seizure? Me being me, kind of hard-headed sometimes, I always say no, because I don't want it to happen. So I said no, I just think I have the flu or whatever, just don't feel well. So she said, do you want me to call the nurse? The nurse's son, actually, at my high school, has epilepsy too, and is my age, went to a different high school, but so she has a connection with me. that time, she called, or during this time, she called the nurse, said, Taylor's not feeling well. I think it might be a seizure. So she ignored what I said. That's okay, because mother's instinct, I get it. She called the nurse sent a security guard, walks in, and she goes, Taylor Sinodis. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, yeah, right here. And she goes, okay, come on. And I was like, where are you going? Where are we going? And she's like, we're leaving. And so I sat there and I put my stuff away, and then all the kids in my classroom started laughing, like, what is going on with her? She's not right. And one of my friends, I was just looking around like, okay, you guys are laughing, but what's going on?
You couldn't talk.
But I couldn't talk. And then I noticed one of my friends look around and say, dude, guys, she's obviously not doing well, just stop. And to this day, I talk to him and I'm like, thank you for doing that. He knows what happened, the whole thing. So then we get up, I walk out, and we walk out the side door of the actual high school, and I immediately had the seizure, I think.
Oh, you collapsed.
I collapsed. I heard the security guard call the front office and say, student down this side, call paramedics. They intercom the nurse. Then I heard the fire department, who's right down the street from me, leave their fire department, come all the way down the street, park. I heard all the little details that you'd think, wow, you really heard that during all that? But I remember exactly, I saw it all. I remember laying there on the nurse's, or the security guard's jacket thinking, okay, here we go again, this is it. Gonna see my friends at the fire department, which
It wasn't so bad. She liked
it wasn't. They wanted to move in a couple times, no big deal. But once I gained consciousness, they started asking me my name. And I always tell this story because I think it's so funny. But they said, Taylor, what's your name? And I looked at them, I go, my name's Taylor, you just said it. And I was kind of snooty, and they were like, oh, okay, she's back. And so from then on, gained friendships with the fire department, give them brownies, tell them thank you.
So is it more frightening for you that people are really anxious around you?
It can be. There was another instance where I had 3 in a row at my house, and after the first one, they started hooking me up and hand under my back. I'm not even sure what they were doing. But then I started feeling, I try to tell myself that I'm not going to go into another one, even though that time I did go into 2 more actually. And I felt my stomach start convulsing, and slowly I was like, uh-oh, here we go.
It looked almost like she was going to throw up.
Yeah, and that's how it felt. And then the next thing I heard was, here she goes again, and then they had to let me go, and they were trying to talk to me. But it's very interesting and very hard. And I talk about it, going to college, meeting people, sitting at the table. They say, give you your name and say one thing about you, or one fun fact or whatever. So I go, hi, my name's Taylor and I have epilepsy. And they all just go, what? And then I tell them, because I'm like, you guys need to know. And sometimes I'll make it a joke that I have a pill in my purse, that it's not a bad thing. You pull out the pill, you pop it in my mouth, and I'll be good. But a lot of them get this stone cold, oh my gosh, are you really telling me this? But I have to, because it's part of me, and I just accept it. So.
Thank you.
You were mentioning how what you can feel or what you can see or whatever. I teach high school, and I have a child with epilepsy that is very, very mild. However, I had a student that had a serious seizure in my classroom. Is there something that lets you know that you're about to have one, or things that we should do to recognize that it happen, or what to do after it starts?
Right. There are auras, but not for everyone. My auras tend to be the stone cold stare and kind of spaced out, not sure what's going on, can't talk. But if you can't talk, it's kind of hard to say, I feel like I'm going to have a seizure. So,
Yeah, everybody's
different.
Yeah, it's
They
kind of.
ask, the teachers would ask us that question as well. Is there something we're going to know about your daughter? And honestly, it is just a blank look, and if you know her well enough, you'll be going, okay, now we got to be careful. But as far as helping somebody after or during a seizure, you should make them comfortable, lay them down. Paramedics or the emergency operator would tell us to lay her on her side. They used to say the left side. Make sure she has a pillow under her head, if you can, because you want to protect the head from injury. And of course, on their side, if they do throw up, you don't want them to aspirate. And not to touch them. I've heard two different things. I've heard people say, well, do you hold your daughter? Do you control her? And I was told, don't touch her. Leave her alone. Let her get through it. That if you actually touch her, that it will get worse. These are just things that we've been told along the way. Yeah, make the person comfortable and get help. Call 911 immediately. Get someone there who's a professional to help you. Most of the time, I mean, they come out of them. Some people come out of them quickly and do fine. She tends to need to go to sleep, and she has horrendous headaches. Most of the time we've gone to the hospital and they've given her medication for her headache. And then she wakes up hungry, and God forbid that you don't get her food within a half hour because she is nasty. I'm hungry, and it's Chipotle. I don't know why, but yes.
That's random.
Since you did mention it, it's nice timing to point one more thing out. Turning seizure gently to the ground on the side, cushion their head. Don't put anything in their mouth.
Yes.
Because when you actually heard people say, oh, they will swallow their tongue. Well, I'd love to see anybody say swallow. But that's one of the misconceptions that people for years have said, put a ruler, put your wallet in their mouth.
Right.
Put your thumb in the mouth to hold it down. You will lose that tongue.
Yeah. In fact, the first grand mal she had, it was very long. She chingered up the inside of her lips, the inside of her mouth. She had really
Bad news.
Yeah, it had gotten pretty bit up. So, but she's fine. Yes.
You said that she had her first seizure when she was 17 months?
Yes, ma'am.
And then nothing until... Were there any kind of, like, the mini seizure, the Mont seizures or anything like that maybe you didn't recognize at the time and then went back to look?
That's absolutely a great question, because I have said this over and over again. She had her first seizure. They told me it was a febrile seizure. She did have a high seizure. It took them 20 to 30, high fever. It took them 20 to 30 minutes. They finally had to give her Valium to stop the seizure. So I went with, okay, it's a febrile seizure, everything's great. However, we knew during my pregnancy that she had some brain abnormalities. Her head was enlarged, and they thought she was going to be hydrocephalic. So after that, they put her on 1.5 years of phenobarb. Got off phenobarb, we got to school, preschool, high school, junior high, the whole thing. I can't tell you how many instances I had with my child saying to me, I just don't feel good. Whoa, I've got a dizzy spell. I don't feel right. Can you come get me? I have a headache. And then you'd get her home, and she'd seem to be fine within an hour. And we'd go, okay, does she just want to come home from school? Is she messing with us? Now, when she's had most of her seizures asleep, I have said to myself, I wonder how many even small seizures she might have had in her sleep that we as parents have never heard because we're down the hall or whatever. I don't know. I tend to think that those moments of opening the car door to step out and she goes, whoa, I have a dizzy spell, that maybe there was a slight seizure or a hiccup. And if you saw her medical records, this thick at the pediatrician's office, took her in constantly. They would do blood workup, check her out. They knew that she has certain abnormalities, but they would say, I don't know, she's fine. Her blood levels are fine. It could be allergies or constantly. So yes, to this day, I still think there was a possibility that we didn't see warning signs.
Yeah, because our son, we had a teacher say he must be ADD because he's staring out the window a lot. And we said, well, or at least I said to myself, well, if you were my teacher, I'd be staring out the window too. I didn't say that to her personally. I didn't want her to take it out of my kid. But, and then later on, we found out accidentally because he was asked to test some EEG equipment.
Yeah.
And the neurologist then called us and having seizures, and he's had a whole lot during this test, and we had no idea. If it hadn't been for that weird occurrence, we wouldn't have known. But it was the same thing where he had what was diagnosed as a febrile seizure when he was 5, and then nothing again until he was 16 or 17.
And from what I understand, it's not uncommon when kids hit that age to see more people have epilepsy.
Did you get a 504? Did you have school make accommodations?
Yes, we did have accommodations, and it's helpful because you do want people to understand that your child is not being lazy, isn't trying to not get what you're trying to teach them. I mean, it's difficult. But sometimes, as a student, she felt singled out. She would sometimes get upset, and she'd say, I hate being pulled out. She was pulled out for reading at one point. Her reading is beautiful. It's her comprehension that's an issue. But she would be in there with other kids who couldn't hardly spell or read, and she'd come home going, I don't like going there. I'm annoyed. These kids are not at my level. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. And when I would say something, they'd say, well, but her comprehension is poor, so let's take her back. Some teachers were awesome and wonderful, and they worked through the system with me. Other teachers, she had some instances in high school where that teacher was not going to budge. And then I marched into the principal's office. And then I would get somewhere sometimes. It just depends on the person, the teacher, and I'm sure the level of education or experience the teachers have had with these kids, because they have to grow too as people. These are, it was new for us, and the whole time we were going through it, I'm always going, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? How much do you fight for your kid? How much do you look at your kid and go, okay, could you do this a little bit better? Can you work a little harder? Can you, whatever it takes, because you are trying to balance, I don't want to facilitate this, but I do know that we are dealing with these issues. Yes, go ahead.
I actually had a question for both of you guys, just for a different perspective.
Okay.
My daughter is 5, just in kindergarten, and I didn't think that I'd have to deal with it so quickly, but we moved, so she's in a new school district, and she's falling behind.
Right.
We had a conference with her teacher, and she was concerned. So just last week, one of the other children in her class, because she's been trying to accommodate my daughter to try and help her along, but it's kind of noticeable, and one of the other kids called her stupid.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, from a mother's perspective, how you handle something. I'm assuming you had similar issues, not necessarily dealing with, the epilepsy, but that aside with the learning and all that stuff. I wanted to know first how you would deal with it as a mother, and then how you dealt with it being as that person, so that I can try and tell her in a new way I can.
I was bullied in elementary school, and I honestly I don't even remember. I remember certain things happening to me, and kids, story, a kid threw a wiffle ball at me in PE class, and it went straight to my face. Literally turned around, and I had the big Coke bottle glasses back in the 90s, and they fell off, and I was bawling and the whole thing. Well, I called him a brat or a bully or whatever it was, told my mom.
We ain't done swearing
I never. Those are just those two. Anyways, so told my mom. Principal didn't really believe us, right?
I think they kind of downplayed it as, I'm sure it was an accident,
Right.
basically.
But years later, senior year in high school, walking down the hall by myself, big old guy
Football player
walks right next to me and goes, Taylor Sinodis? And I said, yeah. And mind you, elementary school, junior high, now high school with the same kid. And senior year, he goes, I'm sorry for throwing that wiffle ball at you. And I turned around, and I've never really talked to him since that, because I was like, why would I talk to him? And I said, oh, no problem, no worries. And now he's a ginormous ASU
linebacker.
Yeah. And he apparently is a huge teddy bear now. I don't know if I changed that or what, but thank you. I don't know how you really, you just say that you know that you're unique and everyone else has unique things about them, and not to let it affect you negatively. but let it enhance you and make you stronger. Because I'm sorry, but it really, in the long run, you're only making yourself better by not letting them bring you down.
And she has said that very well. However, I will say that I noticed from the time she was little that children would look at her differently. She had in her left eye would turn in, and so she had the thick Coke bottle glasses, and she was delayed in speech and gross motor skills and a lot of things. And I noticed it right off the top from from preschool. Teachers would say to me, she needs to learn use her words. She needs to fight back by using words when kids mistreat her. And I would say, well, what is she doing? Is she doing something to mistreat these kids? And they'd say, it's not your daughter. And I'd go, okay, well, this is wrong. Why would people treat her like this? I saw it kindergarten, saw it throughout elementary school. In fact, I got through 5th grade, and one of the teachers pulled me aside and said, next year, don't let her be in this person's class because these group of girls are very mean to her. And I said, oh, okay, here's a teacher telling me, thank you very much. She taught all my kids, love her. And so I made sure, 6th grade, she was not in with these kids. This didn't stop. Junior high, senior, she never found a great group of girlfriends or friends that kind of just stuck by her. Even her best friend that she did have just because of dance kind of at high school left her as well. While she is saying that she's strong, it has affected her because socially, even now as a 21-year-old, I know that when she tells people she has epilepsy that they are afraid because they don't know what they're dealing with. Excuse me. She does not really have a great core of friends. There's a handful of people, mostly boys, that have stuck by, and it's true. There have been more boyfriends that have been good to her. But socially, it has impacted her life. She has not done what a normal 16-year-old girl does. She did not do what an 18-year-old. She did not get to move out of the house and go to college like these guys. She doesn't have a group of friends where she goes, Saturday night, let's go out, to the movies or whatever. Partly, she knows she can't party. She knows she can't drink. She knows that she can't put herself in a situation that could hurt her. And therefore, I think even college students just think, yeah, she's not like me. So she is wonderful with kids with special needs. She's wonderful with autistic kids. She really is. She's going to school right now to be a teacher, which I think she'd be awesome.
If I could have one more thing. To just round out the answer to that question. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I've actually had a parent call me and ask, what can I do? My child's being bullied in school. And I think I heard a comment earlier in the earlier session about hire a lawyer, and you certainly can do that. But from my experience, personally, your best friend in that situation is going to be the teacher in the back in the back of the room. Get to know your teachers, get to know the administrators. They're your eyes and ears. They're the ones that are going to look out for your child. You can certainly hire a lawyer, but I really don't think that the lawyer is really the best solution for that problem. The problem is best addressed by having, great teachers that are looking out for your child.
I mean, I definitely agree. I've got to know, like I said, she's had 2 teachers now, and all the rest of the teachers, PE or whatever, that cycled through, I know all of them. And because I want them aware of it, especially right now, she's having issues because of the behavioral stuff, especially in kindergarten. That's or at least that's what we were focusing on at first. So yeah, I mean, I've been in contact with all of the teachers, and she didn't have any problems like this at her other school. But now that she doesn't have the teachers protecting her right away, they can only do so much. And of course, I did send an email, and I said, look, this is what she told me. This is what's going on. And she had a talk with all the little girls that were involved and everything. And I obviously don't want to think badly of other children, especially at that age.
Right.
But if your child, you feel really defensive about it.
I'm not sure I answered the question, but as a mother, what I did is I became her best friend. But there's a danger in that at some point because she needs to have her life, and she needs to move on. And as mother and daughters go, you go through periods where, you know, she wants you to be around, she wants your help. Other times, like, Mom, if you open your mouth, one more time, I'm out of here, you know? It's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. So I did become her best friend, and I heard some talk in the community. Sometimes you hear people say, well, she's facilitating that, or she's too protective, or she, you know, there was no other way for me to feel like I could get, you know, she had to have somebody. So that's what I did.
And I mean, I have an older daughter who's 8. So, and that's another issue that I'm getting through. I don't want her to think of her sister as being different in the first place. She's as normal as you or I. But she's only 8, and I don't want her to really have to think about treating her differently because there are differences about her. Like, for example, I mean, it's petty things, like picking up your plays or picking up your toys. She's 8, she has to pick up her toys. When you were 5, you didn't have to pick up your own toys either. It's just like little things like this, trying to get her to understand without telling her, hey, your sister's going to have a little bit more accommodations than you did. So I'm trying to avoid that. But she does have people in her life, but there's things that I've noticed, especially socially, where my older daughter, she's she is very outspoken, very social. She would talk to everybody in this room. She's incredibly social. And she tries to be like her older sister so much. And she'll talk to people and say hello and everything and start off. But then the next minute you'll see it like at the birthday party. She had all these kids there for her birthday and she, hi, you know, hey. And then the next thing you know, she's down in the room playing by herself.
Yes.
And that's what, there's these little things and I'm just trying to figure out. I realize it's probably not going to happen, but trying to get it off in the past before it gets that far.
Yeah, I hope that it will improve. I mean, you hope that there are compassionate people, but part of that is, as parents, we have to teach our children to be compassionate towards people who seem different. And hopefully this world is changing so that we do see more of that. But they're children. It happens.
Yeah, I've been there, done that, bought that t-shirt. My question is for the brothers. I have my daughter is 11, and she's had problems all her life, and her brother is 14, so he's 2-3 years older. And we were sitting one day when she was in a hospital, and he said to me, and he was starting crying. Why is it that this is happening to her, and things seem to be going well for me? It doesn't seem fair. Have you guys experienced anything like that, and how do you kind of deal with the fact that you have a sister who has this?
When she started having seizures again at 15 or 16, I was out of the house. So I actually have never really seen what it's like for her to have a seizure or come out of it. I know I would call her on the phone and just make sure she was all right, but I've always thought the same thing. I get good breaks, and sometimes it doesn't happen for her, so I just try to be supportive. Recently, I've tried to learn more about her situation, and I was really happy that she got her learner's permit the other day, so hopefully she'll drive soon. He might be able to answer a little bit more. They're closer in age, but I think for me, I was just not there when she started going through this. So I've been distanced, and it's something I need to learn more about.
I mean, for me, there is a certain guilt attached to it, for sure. My brother and I are very lucky. We've been very successful, and with our parents, we've had a lot of support that has enabled us to be able to do things that kind of exercise our full potential. And I think with my parents' support, it's allowed Taylor to do the same thing. She just faces limitations that we don't. When she started having seizures again, I was out of the house too, and I was in California at college. And I don't know, for me it's, you have to figure out a way to relate, and I don't think I've done a very good job at doing that, and I need to figure out ways to do that. And I think that starts really with just spending more time at home. Now that I'm in Tempe, I'm just about to finish up school, and there's got to be a more proactive effort, I think, on the non-epileptic siblings' part to just, be a good sibling. I mean, my brother and I kind of grew up together, and it was always easy to be friends with him, even though sometimes I want to destroy him.
We live together right now.
We live together right now, and but it's just it is hard. There's no really good answer to it. For a while, what I was trying to do was build a connection based on what interested me, but I think I did it in a negative way. So that So like I'm really into music, so I would say, here, check this out. Oh, and by the way, what you like isn't good. And that's
she still does that.
Well,
they both are guilty. So.
To a far lesser degree. So the thing is, I guess, is just trying to build some sort of connection and not to build separation. I guess that's what I would say.
But then you tell them, hey, this is what I like, and they automatically say what they think, but they don't give it a try.
Well, I'll give it a try.
He does.
I'm not a believer.
He's a guy. He's a guy. Yes. Yes.
To answer the education question a little bit, there's a new law in Arizona, and you would probably know more about it if you contact the Goldwater Institute, that if your kid has a disability, you can take the money that they would put into school with your kid, and you can find your private tutoring or your private services or whatever. And I don't know what it's called, I'm sorry, but if you contact the Goldwater Institute, they'll tell you. And you have to apply by May 1st for that.
You can also contact Mark over there. He knows as much about this area and what's available as anybody I know.
Yes. I just wanted to ask Taylor, because it sounds like you've done something that we've just started to do with our daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And you remind me of her quite a bit, only she's much younger. You talk about laying it out, that you have epilepsy and you've got the pill in your purse in case you have trouble.
Yes.
Do you think that has helped you socially coming forward and just putting it on the table to start?
Socially, sometimes yes. There are going to be some people that are, but for yourself, you have to know that you made it aware to everyone as much as you can. I mean, I've done, I think, 3 presentations on it. I wear my epilepsy bracelet still, even though I'm not considered active. I pass it around to people. I tell them, hey, the epilepsy walk's coming up, come walk with me. What else do I do? You gotta make it aware, and you have to be comfortable with that's who you are. And I just recently told Mark and Nikki about a song by Chris Allen called Fighters. And one of the verses are, we are born to be fighters, we're strong, we're survivors. They can knock us down and make us fall, but we'll get up, because after all, we're born to be fighters. And I heard it, and I thought, that's perfect. That's what we do. That's what we have to do, because if it happens, we can't just dwell on it and say, this is what happens, this is me. Like, we can't live in that moment. We have to keep progressing. And I think that's important, is just keep progressing, keep making your life better, because it won't. If you don't let it stop you, it won't. Thank you. Yes.
I got the honor of hearing one of your presentations.
Yes.
In your public speaking class.
Yes.
So you did a fantastic job, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I did have a question, because your dad was saying, you should be, kind of make friends with teachers and administration and so forth. What if the administration is your problem? Actually, it's not our problem. It's actually administration. And of course, if I turn around and go over their heads, then we usually get some resolution at district level. But administration just hates me now, because I've gotten everything I've needed or wanted thus far, and I'm about to have to do it again.
They're just going to have to get over it. When we would meet with the administration or the teachers, clearly, even going into the very first meeting, they understood I was a lawyer, so they really didn't give me a real hard time. And so, but there were some teachers that were difficult, and we would simply have to work with what we had. And when we live in Gilbert, and so through the years of having our older children, we were actually very fortunate that we had older children, so we were already known to the administration at the elementary school, and the junior high, and the high school. And some of the teachers that had taught our children had actually moved up into the administration at the district. So we always felt like we had yet another level that we could get to if we needed to. But I think you just have to be an advocate. You continue to have to advocate for your child, and that's all you can really do. And if they don't like you, then that's just too bad. And then you can also call Mark, because he's got a real big mouth, and he'll be happy to advocate for you as well.
I ran out of cards. Actually, tonight, I just want to say I really appreciate more and more. This is a discussion that can go on for hours and hours because there's so many different things. But we do have one more speaker, so I still encourage you to write down your questions. But this is a really good sign that we're asking so many questions about family and dealing with it that I will. Excuse me. You want to stand up?
I do actually.
This is a good transition.
Yeah.
We have a program also, there's a couple of different things. Support activities with families and parents just like yourselves is something that Becky's very passionate about. Another program that I'll mention really quick, HOPE. HOPE mentors are helping other people with epilepsy. These are situations that if you're a little challenged and saying, I just don't understand, or I need somebody that I can relate to, call our office. And we'll hook you up with somebody like the Sinodis Roadshow here, or somebody like Becky, or there's so many different people. A few more of our people that we can hook you up and we can talk about all these different questions. So, Becky?
Yeah, I was itching to stand up halfway through the thing. We have, through the foundation, some wonderful support groups across the valley. And we happen to be a part of the East Valley Support Group for Parents. And we have a Facebook page with over 60 families in it. And so that is something I rely on daily, you know. Log into Facebook and I have a new question about a new med and a new side effect, and does anybody else have this? And it's something where I can have instant access to other parents day or night, 24 hours a day. You know, they'll get the little message on their phone or their computer, and I'll have a million answers from other parents who've been there before. And then our particular group is at Banner Cardin's, the educational area of that hospital, the second Saturday? The second Saturday of every month.
Great lead in to find out what part of town you're in.
Yeah.
As far as the groups, when you go to our website. epilepsyaz.org, you go into support activities and empowerment groups, and you'll find a calendar that shows you exactly where they are, when they are. You don't need to make a reservation. If you want to link up with them on Facebook, that's up to your family. You heard of Facebook?
Space.
Arizona Epilepsy, and we can hook you up because they're private groups. And that's the greatest thing about them. They're private groups, so if you're a little intimidated, just sit back in the wings and watch the questions. If you want to throw out a question, throw it out there, because we've seen so many people come forward that they're just very hesitant. And that's why Becky.
And some of these parents in these groups are very new, and so you're going to be helping them, and that's going to give you a purpose. Like, I'm not going through this by myself. I have all these other people that are relying on the things I've been through, and you're a help instead of somebody that needs help all the time.
Becky,
And
what's your address right now?
What?
What's your home address right now?
Hey, my home address is room 204, PCH.
She's going through some great things here, so
Right.
that's what we're all here for.
Right, yep. So chase me down if you want to find a support group.
Thanks, Becky. Real quick question for you.
I just wanted to say, Taylor, you're very courageous, and it's obvious your family is very proud of you, and thank you for sharing today.
Thank you. One final speaker. Dr. Williams, Corwin Williams. Corwin earned his MD and PhD degrees from Washington University in St. Louis. Did extensive residency training at Baylor in Houston, including